Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everybody, it's Debbie Potts doing a new Whole Athlete episode on audio and video on the Whole Athlete Podcast. You can find us on YouTube and iTunes and all the other audio links for podcasting. So today, if you want to see what Brock Armstrong looks like, you can check into the YouTube channel as I'm interviewing and discussing life and fueling and training and performing with Mr. Brock Armstrong, the now fit guy. Hi, Brock.
Yes. The Get Fit guy.
Oh, sorry. Get Fit guy.
And it's hyphenated. I haven't actually figured out why it's hyphenated, like Get-Fit guy. It must be some kind of grammar thing that I don't know about.
Did you ask?
I'm embarrassed.
I'm sure someone took it, right? It's like a website that a lot of probably guys out there want Get Fit guy, and it's probably taken. So you have to add those other numbers and stuff.
The Quick and Dirty Tips Get Fit guy, like who I actually just took over from our friend Ben Greenfield, who's been doing it since 2011, I think, or maybe 2010. Like it's been going for a really long time, and he just finally got too busy to continue doing it. And he very graciously, I was amazed. He actually, I saw the email that he sent to the Quick and Dirty Tips people saying, Brock Armstrong is the only one that I trust to carry on this show and have the knowledge and stuff. And I was torch. It was really touching, and it's nice to have somebody who believes in you that much too. So,
sometimes we never get enough. We don't often give compliments, and you don't always hear them. So you have to, sometimes it's nice to hear, like, you know what, I'm making a difference, and it always makes your day, right? When you hear, like, we're not just doing this for fun, but we are. It's cost money, and we are doing it for fun. And Brock is someone I love talking to, and he always makes my day. It makes me laugh and smile. So that's why I thought you're a good person to do a video version of the podcast together, because
you can see me dancing.
laughing.
So I'm at my standing desk, of course.
Yeah, you need a guitar because you're a musician. Do you play guitar or just sing?
All my instruments are in the other room.
We could do karaoke podcast next time. It's like that show at nighttime. I don't go to bed after or stay up after 9 or actually 8 p.m. at night. So I never see that talk show at night when they do karaoke taxi cab. Ever seen that?
Oh yeah.
I've seen the YouTube videos, but they're
karaoke
hysterical.
Carpool.
Yeah.
Those are hilarious. I love them.
So we could do that on podcast. We can just have you sing and I'll pick a song. Anyways, I wanted you to come on the show and talk about kind of your new journey you've taken as a Get Fit guy, and you're doing more coaching, and we're kind of end of summer here as we're podcasting today.
Yeah.
And we're both, it's like 90 degrees in Seattle today. So if you see us perspiring a little bit on the video, because we can't have fans on in a room while we're podcasting. I
have my window open, so hopefully nobody's going to start. Yeah,
and
hopefully I won't have like leaf blowers or something right outside my window, because I have to have it open. Otherwise I'm going to be gross.
So detox sauna. So tell us what you've not working for Bulletproof. You kind of went on to a new journey doing the work, taking the torch from Ben Greenfield, and then you're doing more coaching. So talk a little bit about that and what your new journey is. Yeah,
well, I'm like we sort of got into right off the bat, the Quick and Dirty Tips network of podcasts. They've been around for a really long time. They were started by this woman named Mignon Fogarty, who is the grammar girl. And she started the whole platform a while ago, and then Macmillan Publishing actually bought the Quick and Dirty Tips network from her, and they've been developing it ever since. So it's even more exciting than taking over the Get Fit Guy podcast is the connection that I now have with Macmillan Publishing and with a whole network of podcasters. So I've spent all these years being like the guy behind your podcast, or the guy behind Ben's podcast, or Dave Asprey's podcast, or Mark Sisson's podcast. I've always been sort of behind the scenes. And then in April this year, I started the Workplace Hero podcast which was completely my own. Nobody had any say over it whatsoever. It was all me, my ideas, my voice, my writing, everything. And it was a fantastic outlet to finally, I was using my own music. I was putting sound effects in. I still am, actually. I shouldn't say was. And that was really fulfilling, except as many podcasters know, apparently 95% of the podcasts that are on iTunes, and there's 370 some thousand podcasts on iTunes right now, 95% of those get 200 downloads or less per episode. So basically, like, just doing it for the love of podcasting, because like there's no way you can. Yeah, your numbers are getting great though, aren't they? I think like
I just honestly, I don't like to look, because I just like doing this, and it's just really fun reaching out to different people and interviewing and talking to people like you and just growing it that way. And I don't even know if anyone's listening or not. It's just, I enjoy it. So if that makes me happy, I don't care if just one person's listening. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, and I think you and I approach it in a very similar way. Every time we do a podcast, it's an opportunity to learn something, whether it's from the guest that you're talking to, or whether it's from the research that you do preparing for it, or whatever. So sometimes you just need that kick in the pants to actually go and do or find out something you're really interested in. So yeah, it's but it's interesting that 95% of the podcasts out there are basically like us, that are just doing it because they want to learn something, or because they love it, or it's their hobby. And,
so do you have it still on now? Your podcast comes out what days every week, or
every Friday?
That's right.
And I actually just finished writing this week's podcast. Just when you emailed me and said, "Hey, I'm ready," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm ready too." I just finished writing. It's about workaholics. So
do you write a blog kind of ish, research and put thoughts together, then record the podcast by yourself?
Yeah, which is really interesting, because I basically write myself a script. I don't necessarily stick to that script. Like when I'm in the moment and stuff, I tend to go off on tangents and sort of get a little loose with it.
You even do that on your own?
Yeah. But it does help keep me more on track, and it makes me like research and really think through my ideas and get everything really solidified before I record the podcast. And oddly enough, that's exactly the same format that the Get Fit Guy and all the other Quick and Dirty Tips Network podcasts follow as well. They have they insist on having a transcript written. So we write our podcast, we submit it to the editor. The editor goes through and changes some stuff around, fixes spelling mistakes, and maybe interjects some things that, maybe this could be a little more clear, or and stuff like that. Then it comes back to us. Then we record the audio based on that. So it's kind of interesting that I accidentally started doing that same thing minus the editor, because I'm my own editor on Workplace Hero. So yeah, it's a neat way to do it. I've been working on the interview podcast side of things for like 9 years now, where it's always been Ben Greenfield interviewing somebody, Mark Sisson interviewing somebody, you interviewing somebody. So it was really a neat way to completely change things up. And I approach it much more from like a broadcast radio standpoint, where like there's sound effects and there's music and there's transitions and all of that kind of stuff. So fun. Without turning this whole podcast into a podcast about podcasts, it was sort of serendipitous in terms of starting my own podcast and then landing the Get Fit Guy podcast, which of course is even more near and dear to my heart than helping out people in the workplace be a little healthier and happier and more fit, is actually going straight to the fit people and being like, okay. So I've done an episode on like hill training. I've done an episode on too much too soon, like how that can result in injury. I was sort of using rhabdomyolysis as an example of something that's unusual but could happen. What else have I done? How to adopt a carless mindset. So just building more movement and getting around into your day rather than just sort of default get into the car, drive to the next place kind of stuff. And it's been really, really fun. It's a great way to sort of expand my repertoire of things that I talk about and know about and am passionate about.
That's great. Well, That's a good connection, because if you ever write a book and want it published, because I know I've been trying to find a publisher this year to publish Life is Not a Race, and I have my holistic method manual and workworkbook coming out as soon as Rhonda Collier finishes editing it for me.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I'm waiting on her to go through it all.
She's amazing. That's great. Great
yeah,
connection.
so I'm really excited. And then I'd love it to get it published, because it's just so much work or difficult and challenging to do it yourself on self-publishing via Amazon, because there's, I don't know, probably 5 billion books for sale on Amazon.
I can't even imagine.
So I haven't even really promoted my book, Life is Not a Race, except talking about it on here and writing it, blogs about it once in a while. But, get a connection with the publisher is really helpful. I'm sure if you ever want to do a book
if I ever want to do a book.
Yes. Or you can have Debbie do the Get Fit Girl podcast.
Yes.
And it does help, because when I was in school, nutritional therapy school this last year, having to write, we had homework assignments all the time. And if you look at my blog page, there's a whole lot the last 9 months, because I made them a blog post. Yeah. But it forced me to research, because I was studying that topic. But then it made me go, okay, I don't understand this. Let's go online and Google some of those more, get deeper into that, because we wouldn't maybe go in depth into it because we covered so much in a year. But I think being forced to research like that for your podcast is so helpful. I kind of miss having that deadline to do, like, I need a topic I need to write about now, and I need to make it into a story or a podcast for you, or a blog story. Yeah. So good for you.
Yeah. So, and it's really cool having an audience too that kind of asks questions and fuels things. Like the next episode I'm doing for Get Fit Guy is based on a woman who wrote in and asked if there was already an episode about foam rolling, because she said, I've been foam rolling for a while, but I'm pretty sure I'm doing it wrong. And
there you go.
Neither me nor Ben has done an episode about foam rolling. So like, all right. Like, and again, this is another thing that I've been doing for a really long time. And I understand the reasons why I do it, but I don't necessarily have all the physiology just in the back of my brain. So it's going to be really fun to research that one.
How long is each episode?
We're supposed to keep them under 15 minutes.
Yeah. So
but I'm having a lot of trouble with that. I'm tending to be a little closer to 20.
I know. It's like me doing this podcast, 30 minutes, when you chit chat for 10 minutes, and then you do the podcast and wrap it up. It's never 30 minutes. Yeah. So getting to our point today is talking about fueling, training, performing for the whole athlete, of course, but looking at, fall season, I'm trying to plan some half marathons for clients and get people to do their first race. Cause I find I'm planning what we used to always do at Carlsbad half marathon in full in January, and people that have never done a race. I always think it's a great race to do for your first time, that you can walk it. So it's an event, not really a race. And do 13.1 miles because it's along the coastline. Start Carlsbad, California. It's outside of San Diego, north of San Diego, but stuff like that. Do you have clients doing running races in the fall that you have some good tips on training for a new runner?
Yeah,
well, that's off-season triathlete.
That was where I got my start in coaching, was working with beginner runners.
Team and training, right?
Team and training,
Canada.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which was a fantastic way to just gain a lot of experience and troubleshoot a lot of weird injuries and weird training things and weight loss. And like, you just, once you get to sort of the pointy end of the finish line, like the faster people, you don't have to worry about quite so many things for the most part, because they've got a lot of stuff dialed in. But yeah, those beginner runners, you really, it's a great way. If any people are out there and want to become a coach, I highly suggest working with like a beginner running group, whether it's through like a local running store or a charity or whatever. It's an awesome way to not only build a great client base, but also to really learn a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I did American Cancer Society coaching for the Seattle Rock and Roll 1 year. And it was cool. It was a lot of work though, as a coach, when you have all those people and you have the group workouts. But as an athlete, I think it's great to do first time to do something like that as well. That was my first marathon in 2000 was the San Diego Rock and Roll. That was originally, I think, mostly designed for team and training. And I always thought, I want to do that. And then I saw those people when I was doing the marathon by myself, and I was so envious of all those people in groups and support and cheering each other. I signed up the next year for the Maui Marathon. I'm like, I'm doing a fundraiser. So it is rewarding too, to meet new people.
Yeah. Yeah. But in terms of like the people I'm coaching right now, I've actually got 2 people who are training for an end of the year Ironman. And one that's actually, yeah, and 2 that are aiming for marathons. So I'm sort of a little bit of both at the moment. One of my fastest guys that I've ever coached is doing the Berlin marathon. And I'm super jealous. That's a race I would love to do.
Is that part of the what's it called, worlds or the marathon, the majors?
Yeah, it's one of the majors.
Because my client's doing all the majors, and I think that's one of them. The London, it's London. I know he's doing
London, Tokyo, Boston, New York, Chicago, Berlin, and maybe London. Stockholm.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe
so he's
Stockholm.
My client's doing all of them. It's pretty crazy, but your client is fast runner. So talk about, you have all different levels. Do you suggest using heart rate training, as I still do kind of the MAF training, Maffetone 180 minus your age, plus or minus? Do you find that works the best for people training at all levels, or what's your perspective on coaching the athletes?
It's so variable.
It depends.
Yes, I'm trying to resist saying it depends, but it really does depend. Like this fellow in particular, Alan, that's doing the Berlin Marathon. This season, he's had an amazing season. He qualified. He's also a triathlete, and he qualified for the World Championships again. It's 2 years in a row now.
For Kona or the 70.3?
For Olympic distance, actually, for like the ITU stuff. So he's got a really good base. He also did Ironman Muskoka a few months ago. It's
Canada?
in Ontario, yeah.
Okay.
And so he's got an enormous base basically built up. He's like, his aerobic base is, I can't imagine how I could make it more solid. So for him, we've abandoned the whole heart rate training altogether.
Beyond that.
He's beyond that. I mean, his base is super solid. We did heart rate training in the beginning of the year to get him to this point. But now, because he wants to be BQ in Boston, he wants to qualify for Boston. I shouldn't use the abbreviations just in case people don't know what I'm talking about. BQ is qualifying for Boston qualifier. So he's got a very specific time that he needs to hit. So we are training very specifically for paces. Now, if I didn't trust him, and sometimes I don't still, but it really takes a unique athlete to be able to do the training at the right paces without injury, without illness, without all that other stuff, because you really do run the risk of going too hard when you're doing that kind of training, whether it's the volume is too high or the speed is too high or you're not getting enough recovery. I'm definitely, every time I write out his program each week, I'm just like, oh man, go on, hold it together, buddy, hold it together.
Do you have clients like that do heart rate variability testing? And also we just did a podcast with Athletes Blood Tests that specializes in the lab work for athletes out of Boulder. Have you ever looked into that for your clients?
Oh, I've looked into all of that stuff and I know all about it, but have you had any compliance from any of your athletes? Like, no. I can't get any of them to buy into it. That's the biggest problem. Like, we have all these great tools, but getting the damn athletes to actually use it, and especially some of those blood tests and stuff, because I am in Canada, it's a little more difficult to do. Like, you have to go and get an independent blood draw, like Life Labs or somewhere like that, to actually agree to do the blood draw and to ship the blood across the border, and then you just hope that the border doesn't stop it and stuff. Or you have to go to your GP and somehow convince them to do the test, which is very difficult, because socialized medicine is wonderful and fantastic, and I'm not knocking it at all, but it is hard to get them to do a test that isn't completely medically warranted.
That's like, same here though. That's why you spend all the money doing the lab works, because your doctor doesn't do any of them really. Just the basics. So,
but we can't even just say like, look, I'll pay for it. Like, that's just not an option. They don't have a cash register at the doctor, so we can't pay for it even if we wanted to.
Got it.
So there are some difficulties around it, but the biggest difficulty is really just compliance, or getting the athletes to do it. Most of them just don't see the value a big enough value to make it worthwhile, or they don't see themselves as that serious an athlete, or I don't even know what the problem is with a lot of them, but it's it's been a struggle, like for people like us who understand the value of having that heart rate variability every single morning, or having the blood work every 6 months, or even every year would be better than nothing. Yeah. But it's really difficult to get them to do that kind of stuff.
So you're training people you're doing with their new, we do more of the foundation, you're building that base. So you're doing more heart rate, keep it low, stay in that aerobic engine training area. And then after they reach a certain foundations built up, then you kind of go the next layer and add more pace work. And say you want to do a marathon this time, do more splits and doing more tempo runs and things like that in your workouts, more specific training zones.
And I really, before you even get to the base training or to doing any sort of like MAF or even just a traditional long, slow distance kind of running, I've been getting more and more a convert to the idea of prehab.
Yeah.
Like rather than rehab, do some prehab.
I say that
like,
all the time.
I have a few videos that I send some new clients, or even clients that have taken a couple months off, that are movement assessments. So they'll sit down with like a broomstick across their shoulder and sit in like a door frame and see how far they can rotate, whether they can actually touch the broomstick to the door frame. Can they step over the broomstick at a certain height without collapsing in the hips?
Like
just doing
you call it FMS in Canada. It's functional movement screening in the US. I think you guys have it.
Yeah.
Up there.
Yeah. Everybody's got different names for it, but it's exactly that. Just movement screening to make sure that there aren't some deficits that we need to deal with before we even start training for the event. Before you even start running, should you be running? Have you been sitting at a desk for the last 10 years or even longer and have really tight hip flexors, or how your glutes aren't firing, or your back is slightly askew, or whatever it might be? I want to address those before we even have to start the build for the marathon. So often that's a few weeks before I would traditionally start an actual program. We do that. So get them doing the movement assessment, and then I'll give them a bunch of exercises to shore up those weaknesses.
Yeah, and I love that. And that's what I do with most of my clients. As in my fitness studio, we do mostly 30-minute trainings. I call it, functional training, but also prehab and rehab for those. Like, we're trying to prevent you from getting injuries. Yeah. But I find a lot of people that are the triathletes and runners, they don't think they need any strength training because they're doing hill workout there and they get enough strength training. But I'm like, no, you need this for improving your performance. If you want to get faster running, you need to increase your mobility, your core strength, your range of motion, those hips, and just your posture muscles. It's just amazing how many people think, oh, I'm going to cut out strength training. I already get it outside because I go up the hill. But that's key to a lot of the training programs, I think, and that's missed out for most athletes.
Yeah, it's amazing how many runners in particular are afraid of strength work. They're all afraid of bulking up, which is hilarious because speaking as somebody who's been trying to bulk up for the last year, it takes a concerted effort to get any sort of actual hypertrophy to happen. Like, it's quite easy to get those tight small muscles, but to really worry about the real bulking up in quotation marks, you've got to do things like low rep, high weight. You have to intentionally overeat. You've got to even time your meals differently, so your body is releasing the testosterone and the human growth hormone right after the workout, and you're not blunting it by introducing a whole bunch of carbohydrate or something right after the workout. And there's a lot of stuff to take into consideration if you want to bulk up. It's not just going to magically happen because your coach gave you a strength workout on Wednesday interspersed with all your endurance work on other days.
And plus, it's
so hard to get people to believe that. I
know, but the strength work you're giving them, right, is mostly a single leg bridge, a lunge to balance, single leg squat and reach the floor. It's not like it's going to get your butt super big and your quads gigantic. Yeah. It's just so you can have better form and alignment, so you can run better instead of hunched over and rotated inward. But It's
And
so
sometimes
funny.
getting some of those power lift moves in can really give you that explosive. Like if they're a shorter distance runner, especially if they're doing a
sprints.
5K. I coach a woman who just qualified for the Masters, the Canadian Master 5K races, and I do get her doing some like powerlifting because that activates the right type of muscle fiber and improves that. So sometimes it is a little bit of a heavier lift, but again, you're not going to bulk up. Like it's not like you might get some good, strong, responsive, neurally connected muscles, but you're not going to bulk up to the point where you're like scared that it's going to slow you down because you're putting on like 5 pounds of muscle or something. It's just not going to happen.
So let's talk about fueling for training season, and then
as I drink my soda.
Yeah, your Zevia.
It's
not sponsored by, but
flavored. No, they actually sent me a case of it once because I talked about it enough on my podcast. They're like, "You want some?"
Oh, there
and
you go.
I got totally hooked.
So so a lot of people sidetrack, but this is what we do, are drinking the other carbonated water. And I'm waiting for something to come out with, what's the other one called? It's just sparkling soda. I forget the name. I see it every day. Everyone sells it. All the grocery stores, trainers in my studio have it by the case. No, it's in a soda can. It'll come to me.
Right.
So anyways, it's just sparkling soda flavored with like natural flavoring orange, and there's no really calories in it. But it seems like drinking out of aluminum cans, something's going to come out soon of something wrong with eating or drinking
most of them are,
can.
A lot of the aluminum cans are actually like, and I heard the guy from Zevia actually talking about this. They coat the inside with like a protector, so you're not getting the leaching.
But, is it protector toxic though?
Yeah, exactly.
As I learned about detox and nutritional program, we realized how much toxins we put on ourselves, drink, hair, everything is toxic. And I keep thinking, okay, there's something wrong with drinking out of a can that's going to come out soon of that, but nothing against Zevia.
Yeah, well, and it did for a while. What was it when like we were buying the BPA free water bottles for a while there, thinking we were being all smart, and then it turned out that there was like just a different kind of toxin in the BPA free ones. It didn't have BPA, but it had, I can't remember what it was called, but it was like not equally as bad, but still not particularly good for us. So yeah, basically everything in our house is glass now. But someday we'll probably find out that the glass is like recycled glass is like terrible for you or something.
Yeah, something's wrong with everything. So anyway, so fueling for athletes for off season, triathlon season coming to end for most people. And then we've got, this is where I always got in trouble myself, because you get done triathlons, like, oh, it's running season. I'm going to do a marathon, New York Marathon, or 50K trail run. And then you kind of end up training year round. There's no off season.
Yeah.
So for fueling, because we're talking about fueling, training, performing today for running, what is over the years, you've worked with Dave Asprey and Ben Greenfield and Mark Sisson. What's your take and kind of coming with the Brock Armstrong theory of training, fueling for running? And what's your it depends answer probably?
Well, kind of, except it's a little more pointed than just it depends. I like my friend Dr. Tamsin Lewis, who she won Ironman UK a few years ago, and she's a physician in London, England. I heard her say this once, that she's not low carb, she's carb contextual.
Ooh.
And I was like, that is exactly it. Like, because sometimes you need carbs, especially when you're training for something as big as an Ironman or even a marathon or even a half marathon. Like sometimes you need to have a little bit of carbs. So just being sort of blind faith of not eating any carbs, or I'm only eating 20 grams of carbs, well, that's great for somebody who's not training for something really big. But for somebody like me, low carb for me is like 150 grams. Yeah. Because I'm an active person, like not just going to the gym, but also like my life. I'm standing at my desk. I've got every room in my house is on it. We kind of live in, it's almost like a lighthouse. You have to go up a flight of stairs to get to each room. So like I'm on the main floor right now. I go up 3 steps to the bathroom, up 5 steps to the bedroom, up about 12 steps to the dining room, up
like
some more steps to the living room. So it's really, it's great. Like, so I'm forced to be really active. So the idea of being carb contextual is really what I've sort of gotten gotten on board with and gotten down with. And that's really the way I coach a lot of my athletes now too, is to like you having carbs before those efforts where it's really going to benefit you, and you're not going to have the deleterious effects of having all that sugar in your blood and the insulin release and stuff, because your muscles are actually using it and sucking it back up, and you're more insulin sensitive when you're post workout and all of that kind of stuff, using that to our advantage to make sure that we are getting the right amount of nutrients and everything. And I did work for Bulletproof. Well, I'm still working for Bulletproof, but I've been working for them for almost 4 years now. And I've gone through periods of trying to do things like have Bulletproof coffee every single morning. And the problem with that kind of thing is, well, you're missing an entire meal of like having some great veggies. Like what better time than breakfast to have a couple eggs on a huge bed of spinach with a bunch of avocado and stuff. Like you're missing out on that opportunity to get all those great nutrients and stuff, especially for us.
Unless you're working with clients at 5:30 to 11:30 in the mornings, that I have to have the liquid calories. So I just wait.
And again, contextual. Fasting. There you go. Like that's carb contextual, or in this case, fat contextual. Like you do what you need to do and what fits your lifestyle and what fits the activity that you're currently engaged in. So that's sort of my little bigger than nutshell kind of response to that.
But I think what I've learned a lot over the years is, well, similar to all your training, I follow those people you work with and that in nutritional therapy, becoming a nutritional therapy practitioner, we work on, with clients, you're working on 5 pillars, but the first foundation we build is eating real food. And it's about the different macronutrients.
What a crazy idea.
I know. Oh, by the way, my friend, she's, I don't know, almost 70. She is so skinny. I go, what are you doing? She's just scrawny. She's training for marathon. She's super active. We did Ironmans all together. And now she's 70. And she's like, I eat when I'm hungry. Like, wow.
What?
Someone actually eats when they're hungry. It actually, you don't gain weight that way. But we talk about the eating real food and balancing the blood sugar level, and to reduce the insulin surges by regulating blood sugar, I find is what I'm telling more of my clients is the macronutrient ratio will vary per person and your activity level and your sport you're doing and the season. But it's, just like what they talk about periodization of your plates with Dina Griffin and Bob Seabohr in the Metabolic Efficiency talk about the plates. And I kind of see that now. And for us is looking at, is your blood sugar staying steady? Are we eating the right amounts of protein, fat, carbs so your blood sugar doesn't spike? And then we don't want to have the insulin be released and have the drop of the blood sugar and then back up. We want to avoid that roller coaster. So I think to train your body to burn fat for fuel is eating what's the right amount of carbs, protein, fat for you. So you're balancing your blood sugar. Then you should be burning fat. So you can go into, I'm not doing ketosis, but I always keep researching it and reading things because I find it interesting. But also, as we keep talking about in the show since I finished school, is digestion. And if your digestion is not working, which mine was not, I didn't know for the last 5 years trying to get healthier from my adrenal stuff, that if your HCl isn't working, your liver's overloaded, your pancreas, everything's kind of all out of whack, that you can eat whatever fat, carb of real food, still eat good food, but still not be digesting it. So you're not absorbing the nutrients, getting the vitamins and minerals, and all this happens if you're not breaking down your food. And then your minerals, and then your essential fatty acids, and we talk about hydration. And so I think people always have to get a little bit more help if they're not getting results from eating real food and eating more fat, eating a little less carbs. You have to go a step deeper and maybe find a nutritional therapy practitioner, someone that can feel what else is going on. I'm not getting results. So that's my side note, but I keep finding that a big issue. Yeah, if you're not getting results.
And that's one of the things that's really hard to remind people of is I think they hear about things like they listen to a podcast or they read a blog post or something, and all of a sudden they're convinced that they need to get all these gut checks done and they need to start popping HCl capsules and digestive enzymes and stuff. But like it definitely is a problem for a portion of the of society. But it's not rampant. This isn't something that everybody needs to be like freaking out about. It's like a few years ago when everybody and their dog had adrenal fatigue.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, adrenal fatigue is definitely a thing. And you know better than anybody, like how you got yourself into adrenal fatigue. And it took a lot of work. Like you did a lot of years. And it wasn't just because you did a few hard workouts one week. It was years of overtraining and overworking and stuff that landed you in that. And not very many people are that dedicated to their sport or to their fitness level to actually get themselves there. So I think that we do have to be careful with that message.
Yes.
And that's one of the things I'm trying to do with the Get Fit guy too, is to be like, okay, the hysteria level is here. Let's bring the hysteria level down a little bit and then address it for the people who are actually at risk of having these problems, because they're real. They're absolutely real. Like rhabdomyolysis happens to people, not very many people, but when it does, it really sucks.
Well, they don't know. Yeah. But I think what you're saying, right, is that if you are following what everyone's talking about, this more lower carb, higher fat, drinking bulletproof Zevia, bulletproof coffee, you're doing all this stuff. But what I'm interested in is the people like, I'm not dropping 20 pounds. What's going on? I'm not getting results. Those are the people I want to start reaching out to. It's like Jimmy Moore, I didn't listen or read his blog posts lately, but I think people are giving him backlash on how he's, doing this low carb thing for years, and people go, well, look at you. You're not exactly a walking role model. But what's interesting, his wife is in nutritional therapy practitioner school. So it'd be fascinating because all of his metabolic damage from being heavier as he is younger, what he's done to his digestive system, his organs, and people that have bacteria infections and all that. I think people need to realize, again, my point is, what you eat depends, and if you're not getting results, you got to go the next level and figure out the root cause. So for athletes performing well, if they're feeling low energy, whatnot, they might want to, like you're saying, adjust macronutrients. Give yourself a little break that you can't go super low carb when you're training for marathon, but you kind of experiment, because some people can do more and you can still stay. Are you trying to be in ketosis, or you're saying you're 150 grams a day for your body?
I've never actually measured. I have no interest in being in ketosis or staying in ketosis. I've experimented with the amount of carbs and amount of fat and everything, that basically just arrived at what I feel good at. And now I certainly don't count anymore. I just sort of have a general ballpark of like my sort of meal plan in life. It just sort of magically arrives around that. Some days it might be closer to 200, other days it might be more like 50, but just sort of the food that we keep in the house and the way that I tend to eat sort of lands me there.
So I think also throw in there what you're saying is listening to your body when you need to eat. So if you're full, I say you should be full for 4 hours, or, I can go eat dinner or early dinner some days and be full until the next day if I eat the right ratio. So I think I don't test myself either. I do test my blood sugar lately because I was having blood sugar issues because of my adrenal issues, which messes up your blood sugar. Yeah. And so I find that if I eat the right amount for my body, I can, if I don't think about eating too, if you're not home, start eating, that you can actually go a long time without eating. It's a lot of times so psychological.
Well, and like you were saying, like it's only been a couple of generations, like that woman that you're working with that's 70, like her generation and any generation before that certainly would have gone 4, 5, 6 hours between meals regularly. Like it's only been in the last few generations that we've had this notion, that food is actually available everywhere we look. I was at the hardware store the other day, and there was food at the hardware store. You could actually
package.
Oh, if you're hungry while you're shopping for plywood,
might
you've got some sandwiches here and some donuts. And
of course,
great. That's because
in Canada, there's donuts everywhere.
Hungry. Yeah, maple syrup donut.
Maybe some French fries and some gravy on top of poutine.
Yeah.
So back to runners. So if you're running a race and you're training all these long runs, usually I would do a long run, say on Sundays, and then Tuesday, Thursdays, maybe add another run on Saturdays or something. So do you have people have a specific workout for each workout. Like this long run, I'm going to keep my heart rate low. This day is going to be hill day. This is going to be more an easy recovery run. Da, da, da.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, a long time ago, I got my run coach certification from Dr. Jack Daniels, and he kind of laid it out. Yeah, not the booze guy, but the what's his running formula?
That sounds really bad. I got a certification for Jack Daniels.
From good old Jack Daniels. Except that he's like an amazing, like he was like a legendary decathlete, and he was like one of the first people to actually do like muscle biopsies and see which kind of workouts actually increased like the density of mitochondria and muscle fiber and stuff. Like he's this amazing guy. They call him Tupper Daniels. His nickname is Tupper, which is probably like, I should call him that so nobody thinks I'm just boozing it up. But anyway, when he was one of the first classes he gave is like, you know what, there's only like 3 variables that you can do with running programs. Like it's the distance, the frequency, and the intensity. That's all you got. Yeah. And so really, like in the end, it's like, yep, that's your training program is like, there's a long one, there's a hard one, and there's a fast one. And that's the way that it goes.
But yeah, I think so many people that, may sound like that simple, but most people just do hard all the time. I find if you're not coaching them, they do everything is what Ben used to call in his book, the black box, or the black hole rather, that it's, you're staying, you want to go that red zone, green zone, the high and low, up and low, and not stay in this black hole. You want to stay. Yeah.
The comfortably uncomfortable is what I always refer to it as, because you're working just hard enough to feel like you're doing something cool, but you're not working hard enough to feel crappy. So that's sort of the default setting when people just go for a run, in quotation marks, they go out for that. And that's junk miles at a certain point. Like when you get to a certain level in your training, or if you're doing like polarized training, then there is a place for those junk miles of just putting in some time. But if that's all you do, then you'll plateau really quickly and likely lose interest. Or get injured,
you burn
or
out.
Both.
Yeah, injuries happen. But it's funny, yesterday I ran down in Portland, Oregon. We were at a friend's house because we went to Hood River cycling on Saturday. But then yesterday we were able to run down the waterfront. You go one end around, and it was like 11 miles. And it's funny being on this pathway, which is great to do heart rate training because I'm trying to rebuild myself and my endurance. So I have to go super slow, but keep my heart rate in my range that I can build up that endurance because I'm back to base building. But it's funny, just people watching, because I'm just, entertaining myself running alone, that I'm watching everyone, how they, working too hard, they're breathing heavy. People are training for Portland Marathon coming up in about 6 weeks. And so it's fun to kind of observe how people train and how hard they're working. And that's what I do in a race itself. And I always coach clients this way as well, is that, if people pass you, just listen to the breathing. You'll probably pass them later in the race because they're going out so dang hard.
Dude, it's only 5 kilometers in. You shouldn't be breathing like that. Slow down.
I know. I always try to say that if I'm racing, going, try to hold back. But, I think pacing yourself and those training runs are key. The long, slow distance, I find. But I know my fastest marathon I did, it seems like a lifetime ago, I did a 3:12 marathon in Boston and a 3:18 I did in Boston. I did well in that course because I think I trained for it in Seattle because we have a lot of hills like that we can practice on. But I did the long, slow heart rate, long, slow runs on Sundays. But then I added what you were saying with clients too, is once you build up that base for years, I could add that pace work. So say I wanted to train a certain pace, we started doing, it would be 2 miles, 3 miles, next week 4 miles at the end of your run or the middle of the run, and warm down. And I love that type of training.
Yeah.
When you're
like doing some overspeed stuff. Definitely have to have a
your
solid base.
I cannot do that now. I'd fall on my face because I'm like a slug right now. But it's that when you've created that base, like you said, with your more advanced client, and then you can step it up and you want to work pace, doing those pieces, the tempo pieces are magic, I think. And training on the course profile that your race is going to be like that. Boston's a lot of long downhills and then uphills, and you can practice that. But anyways, I just found that pacing is key, but also that speed work once you build up the foundation.
Yep. Everything has a time and a place. That's the thing that I've learned over the years of running and training and especially coaching. Just when you get to a certain spot, you can almost feel it in the numbers too. And you start to see like the heart rate has dropped down, but the pace has gone up and it's just starting to plateau. And And you're like, well, I think they're like, I don't think it's plateauing because they're not doing the workouts or because they're not sleeping or something like that. Like, I think they're ready. They're ready for the next step. So now it's time to introduce some of those longer hard efforts, or to get them back onto the hills and doing them really hard instead of just those moderate hills and stuff like that. It's fun. It's cool to watch the data.
Do you use Strava or Training Peaks, and do Strava, Garmin Connect, that kind of stuff?
I don't have anybody on Strava right now. I have used it, but Garmin Connect and Training Peaks, sort of that 1-2 combo tends to be the way that all my athletes go these days. I just
was downloading my workout from yesterday on here, but I find there's a new app. I was just going to look up what the name is, but my Canadian friend, Brad Cohen, was telling me about it. You can map your course. So once you put it on, you have the app set up first, but once you put on your Garmin Connect, it showed, like an Ironman or Tour de France, will show the whole profile. Here's where they did. And it'll do that for your own run after you did it. It'll show the profiles and everything. Cool. I think there's an app for everything, but
yeah.
Anyway, so we're probably running out of time as usual, but what are some tips we talked about fueling and training and performing. Race day is the last thing to talk about. Performing race day, what are your tips for fueling athletes? Because we get sucked into doing the gels and the chocolate milk and the Gatorade and the Powerade and performance enhancement supplements and drinks. What's your little 2 cents on that?
Well, obviously the not so earth-shattering news of don't do anything you haven't tried before. Like, hopefully everybody's been testing their race day fuels out for a few weeks leading up to the race, or for years. Like, at a certain point, I knew what I could handle and what I wanted to have on race day, so I didn't have to practice it anymore. But hopefully people are at least like making sure they've got that dialed in, and making sure that it travels well, because as we know, most of us don't necessarily always race at home. So having something you can actually eat in a hotel room is key. I don't know how many times I've had athletes go, oh no, I usually have banana fried up with egg every morning, but I don't have there's no hot plate in the hotel room. What am I going to eat? Like, duh, why didn't you think of this like 3 weeks ago? So then you're sort of like freaking out a little bit. But actually on the course, I've actually become a bit of a believer, and this is probably, you're probably gonna make fun of me, but I've actually started to go back to the gels a little bit. Just a little bit, never in training, like except to test it out and make sure that it sits well with you. But there's something about, like, most of my athletes, actually at this point, I think 100% of my athletes are low carb, not no carb, but they're low carb. And when you actually introduce some of those carbohydrates at the right time on race day, it's like rocket fuel. And sure, it's not the healthiest thing to do, but neither is running a marathon. So let's just face it, like throwing some sugar on the fire isn't the worst thing that can happen. So you go into the race with your low carbs, so you're burning your own fat and everything. But then at a certain point during the race, start introducing that carbohydrate, and it's like lighting a fire under your butt.
Under your butt. Well, that's kind of like an Ironman. I'd start using the Pepsi. I'm never drinking Pepsi ever normally, but this rocket fuel at mile 18 and Ironman, that you're just needing something, or even a half Ironman. I tried it, but have you used UCAN at all for people or yourself?
Yeah, I think I've probably grossed everybody out on this show before, talking about my UCAN experience.
That's right.
I haven't tried it again.
It's like MCT oil kind of thing. Yeah.
Was more just gas. I was just very, very farty, uncomfortably farty, to the point where it was like, you know what, I'm not doing this.
It doesn't work for you.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe my gut bacteria has switched since then, and I'd be able to handle it because I do have a little more in the way of resistant starch on a regular basis now, and I didn't necessarily back then. So maybe I could pull it off now, but my first experience was also my last.
Yes, I had some training clients that I was training and worked out with us biking, and they were experiencing similar problems with taking that. They weren't used to it, so they didn't keep on it. It's not good to train or behind people.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
have that some problems.
Like, why don't you take a turn up front, Brock? I'm like, no, I'm good back here.
No, thank you. So fueling, training, performing is key for running, racing, knowing that how to get the right fuel and how to good training program. We talked about doing strength training, prehab. You're talking about movement training, even starting that before you do a marathon program or half marathon training program, even triathlons as well. But we want to get the foundation, but some movement screening you were talking about. So getting some, we're talking about movement, rotational movements, and getting some range of motion. Your hips is important because I know my hips and internal rotators need to be opened up. And so getting a lot of specific exercises designed for you is key. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time. I find 15 minutes you can do twice a week, even just fit it in. I only train people 30 minutes now. I don't do hour sessions with my clients, and I can train people. Even the other day, someone had to leave early. Dang, we got an hour workout in 20 minutes. I'm getting really good at this because it's just going. Yeah. But having that whole body movements are really key for performance. What else we talked about? Training, the fueling. It depends on what carbs, but eating real food. So we still want you to avoid as much as possible the commercial processed foods or Franken foods, and having too much the sugar and the gluten is often a problem for people. We didn't really touch on that, but that's always common in the peanuts and the soy, corn. A lot of times that irritates people's gut. So real food is what we mostly talked about. And then training, having heart rate training, building that foundation. And then we talked about if you build that base up for months and years, I would say over a year, right? How long do you have to get to build that foundation? I know I'm restarting.
They say sometimes it's like 3 years. I think
that's how long it's taken me. So
3
years
really
or more.
Hit that, like the efficiency too. And I know that 10,000 hours thing is a whole can of worms that we don't want to get into. But again, like the sort of the 3 years, 10,000 hours, like we're efficiency machines. Humans are incredibly adept at just finding efficiency in everything we do. So as we do it longer and longer, our bodies get more efficient at it. And it seems to be like that 10,000 hours, 3 year kind of thing for sports.
Good. And then last minute we have, where do people find you? And you're doing coaching and your website, how people can
I've actually got a couple of spots that opened up in Skywalker Fitness because it is already the end of August, and in Canada we're kind of wrapping up the season. So if anybody's looking to do some winter training and want to get on board, just go to skywalkerfitness.ca, and you can send me an email at brock@skywalkerfitness.ca, not .com, because I'm Canadian, and I think I didn't want to splurge for both URLs. I probably should at some point because I doubt somebody's got skywalkerfitness.com. And if anybody's listening to that, don't buy it. Don't be a jerk. I'm going to buy it right now.
Save Brock. Good. Well, thanks for coming on the show. And people can find your Get Fit Guy on anywhere.
quickanddirtytips.com. Quick and Dirty Tips. And you can find all the Quick and Dirty Tip stuff there. And I'm the Get Fit Guy.
And then your other podcast.
And workplacehero.me. Because I like the weird endings. It's .me, workplacehero.me, because it's all about you. See, I want you to look at it and go, workplace hero, me. Make me the workplace hero. That and the .com was gone. So. All
right. You have to say the real reason. Not me. Okay. Well, thank you, Brock. We got you're a busy man. I was like, move on to a new job, but you have more going on.
Yeah. So, no, I love change. Change is amazing.
That's good. All right. Well, we know where to find you, and we'll catch up later and see what else is new for off-season training or some new nutrition stuff.
Yeah.
Microbiome. We're going to do neuroplasticity coming up next month too.
Ooh, cool.
Be a cool topic.
Yeah, I'd love to come on and talk about just like strength training in the off-season, because I think that's a beautiful time to put on some muscle.
Can you show video back there? Can we add you doing some strength training, some at-home workouts? Do a little video.
I have some... I've got dumbbells behind me, but my headphones will fall out.
Lift the plant up.
I have so many plants. I love the plants. Keep me happy.
All right. Keep those plants green, and we'll see you in a few months, and we can do some strength training for off season.
Sounds awesome. Thanks, Debbie. Right. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, anytime for you, Brock. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.